so fascinating the way the live streams work. It just suddenly, miraculously appears and
Yeah.
begins. You there, Rib, Karin?
I am. You too?
Yeah, it says, I should actually see if it says live on mine.
Yeah, I think she'll send a little chat that says go, and I think we'll both see that. So we'll just stay quiet until that, and then we'll be ready to go. It should be momentarily.
I see it appearing on Facebook itself, so that might be fine.
Okay, welcome everyone to After Lunch Special. And I'm so grateful that you've decided to join us here today. It's a really wonderful opportunity with Science of Mind magazine. And we've already had some fantastic interviews as we've been going through this. And today I'm so grateful to be kicking things off in a new way for this week and interviewing another amazing author that has graced the pages many times of Science of Mind magazine. So I'm here today with speaker and author Jeffon Seely, who comes to us from his home in Redlands in Southern California. And Jeffon he's an international speaker with a background in the practical application of Science of Mind, one of my absolutely favorite things about this teaching. He's an expert in diversity and inclusion, and he started his journey with Science of Mind with Reverend Dr. David Alt, who also has a featured series of treatments and affirmations throughout this month's issue. So it's such a beautiful marriage, and we love it when things like that come together. So since those days when he first met with Dr. David Alt, he's gathered a whole bunch of interest in his work, and so much so that in 2018, he spoke at TEDx Bismarck. And it's on YouTube. You should check it out because it's totally worthwhile. But in the meantime, he travels around the country. He's now helping nonprofits and corporations connect more deeply with their inner purpose and direction. And as I mentioned, one of the featured authors in this month's magazine. So welcome, Jeffon.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be here.
Wonderful. Well, let's just get started. I really wanted you to tell me a little bit about your interest in the heart. What do we still need to know about the role of the heart in our lives today?
Yeah, I'm always grateful to be able to write with Science of Mind. And this particular theme was something that aligned with me extremely well, because the heart, in my research and just looking, the heart is the first organ that begins to form within the body when we're resting in our mother's womb. And it's a fascinating thing to begin to comprehend, not just the physical heart that is beating within us, but the essence that is enabling our heart to beat. And for myself, when I bring that awareness into my own experience, suddenly it allows me to slow down. And in that slowing down, it allows me to connect to the present moment and with the life that is all around me, not just presently, but going back, spanning throughout time. And as we become in alignment with that heart that is dwelling within us, the essence that is enabling that heart to beat, it seems as if we can be guided, that we can be led, that we do not have to lean towards intellectual understanding of things. Instead, we can be. And
Mm-hmm.
that root word of courage is actually directly related to the heart, which is something that I think all of us are embracing during this time, wherever we find ourselves, to have courage to continue forth in spite of the uncertainty or in spite of the unknown. So Yeah, the heart is something that connects all of us. Our hearts are beating right now, whether we're aware of it or not.
Hmm. So you mentioned, at this time, and so many people are going through, some different forms of dissonance at this time. Is there something that you experienced where you could say, you were going down one path and then you reconnected with your heart and were able to approach it from a different point of view? Do you have something that you can give as an example, maybe?
Yeah, one thing that I often share when I'm traveling around and speaking, particularly with CSL and New Thought communities, is this number of 100,000. And those of you who have read my article in this month's magazine, I begin it with that number, 100,000. And that is the average number of heartbeats that the human has each and every day. So each of us, this is day number. So I went to school for accounting. So here comes some numbers. This is day number 147 of 2020, which means this year, you and I have had the opportunity to take roughly 14.7 million heartbeats. Our heart has beat that many times. And of all those sacred beats of the heart, how many have you just simply paused and been aware of? And for myself, when I am aware of at least 5 heartbeats, I can slow down, connect to the present moment, remember my connection. And it is in the present moment that I think, that I experience emotions, that I make my choices, that I commit to actions. And all of those things are contained within this beautiful moment that we call now. And if I am mindful enough to be attentive of those sacred beatings of my heart, it brings that much essence or power to my experience. And that is something that all of us could do at this time, is just mindfully embrace 5 heartbeats, particularly when things are seeming extremely stressful or chaotic, or you're frustrated or angry or uncertain. You can always come back to that part of you, not the physical heart that is beating, but the infinite essence that is enabling that heart to beat within you.
Mm. Wow, that's takes some powerful thinking to go with that. Do you incorporate your breath with that, or literally just feel? Because when your anxiety is high, your heartbeat is going so fast. Do you literally feel into that heartbeat and expand from there?
Yeah, well, I found in my experience, when I am stressed or overwhelmed and my heart is beating fast, it's often my breath is very shallow. So I'm probably not breathing below this point of my body.
Mhm.
And if I'm feeling my heart and slowing down, and then I can take some mindful breaths deep into my belly, which then, brings this soothing sensation. Definitely doesn't miraculously change what is happening in the external world, but it does shift something internally. And I think we all can agree that that which is existing within ourselves tends to reflect in the outside world. And if we can find that peace or that calmness or that balance or that foundation of certainty within ourselves, despite the uncertainty out here, that puts us in a very powerful and compassionate place to move forward.
Mm. That's beautiful. I can feel it. I can feel it right now. It's lovely. So, when you're doing your work with nonprofits and corporations, you started originally working on diversity. Can you tell me a little bit about what your work is right now and how you're helping organizations and nonprofits, businesses with their issues and their moving forward?
Yeah, that word, those words right now is fascinating, because right now I was traveling all over working with organizations, and as we're well aware at this current time, a lot of those things have just simply been postponed due to the coronavirus and COVID-19. But the work that I specialize in and focus on is diversity and inclusion, resiliency, leadership. Ultimately, it comes down to one word, and that's the word transformation. It's about individuals recognizing the role that they play in creating the culture, the environment, the workplace, or just even what's taking place within themselves. If they are willing to experience transformation, not just by way of simple behavior patterns like, oh, well, let this person know that they belong, but instead shift cognitively by way of mindset or attitude or beliefs or perspective, then that opens the doorway to move towards different results. So it all comes down to, how can we begin to transform ourselves, not just change, but transform ourselves into a greater version of ourselves? Because that is the way that more inclusion begins to unfold. That is the way that we become more resilient. That is the way that we become more compassionate, greater leaders, and all of those things. So transformation is the word that I really lead with in the work that I do with organizations and nonprofits.
You know, transformation is an incremental experience. And sometimes, people are at different levels of consciousness, different levels of awareness at any given time. And, we can even go back and forth, right? We spiral up and then we spiral back down again. And, we're all over the place. At this time, when we've had these extra layers happening all over the world, is there anything that you feel is of particular value to try and get that focus back in on our ability to transform?
Yeah, well, very quickly, I define transformation by way of one of my mentors. There's a big difference between change and transformation. Change is what is happening with the seasons. It's getting warmer. Summer's going to be here. It's eventually will be fall and then back to winter. And so change is temporary. Change, we can always go back to what once was. So change is somewhat, it's not permanent. Transformation is something that is permanent. It's when a seed blossoms when a tree blossoms from a seed, or when we are born, we cannot go back to what we once were, at least in the form like I won't go into a visual representation there, but we cannot go back. So transformation is walking through a doorway that disappears once we step through. And in terms of today, I think something that is just really on my heart, I was mentioning to you before the call, yesterday here in America, we celebrated Memorial Day, where we honor the veterans who have fallen or who are no longer here, who pushed forward for the country itself. And I woke up and the first thing I saw was another unarmed man of color dying with a knee of a police officer in the back of his neck for 10 minutes sitting there. And I feel we as human beings, we have this ability to embrace many of the things that we talk about in Science of Mind. We know deep down that there is one essence, but in honoring and embracing that does not mean that we can bypass some of the inequalities or inequities that are existing and many people are experiencing on this planet. And so perhaps from my standpoint, using our heart, moving us towards more human equality, where we begin to recognize not just race, not just ethnicity, not just gender or gender identification or sexual orientation or any of those things that we decide to separate ourselves from other people. But if we truly begin to recognize that we are not superior nor inferior to any other human regardless, it is then that it would seem that we can step forward towards lasting transformation in terms of creating a world that works for all.
Yeah, it's an ongoing project, and have this feeling maybe that your phone is going to be ringing off the hook pretty soon as you can get to places with some of this new ideas and new ways of looking at things.
Yeah.
For those who are watching today, and I know you went through some of those steps, but is there anything in particular that you would want them to do as an early step to really engage? Like, what are maybe some of the signs that you are starting to engage with your heart as opposed to, say, something else?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I would say is to really embrace this idea of diversity, which equals differences. There are no two humans that are exactly the same. And in honoring the differences that exist across this entire planet that we have to call home, begin to mindfully be aware of those differences that you build a barrier that separates yourself from another person. And you can only do that by way of looking within yourself. Hence the reason why inclusion is not just what an organization does, but what each individual does within the organization, because that then creates a culture of inclusion. So for us, we can begin to look within ourselves and ask, what are the ways that I am building barriers that prevent other people from feeling as if they belong, as if they have value, as if they are respected, as if they are wanted. And then do not just jump out and all of a sudden do all these things out here, because that will be very surface level and that's just changing. but instead look within yourself and ask, what do I believe? What is the perspective that I have that creates these barriers that I subconsciously or unconsciously reinforce day in and day out? And am I courageous enough to use my heart, lead me into the unknown so that I can begin to build bridges where there once were only barriers? And I think that we all can do that. It's not intellectual, it's a way of being. It's a spiritual way of operating.
Oh, I'm so grateful for the time that we have together, and I can't believe that we're actually really coming close to the end here. I'd like to really thank you for your ongoing contribution to the science of mind and your generosity of spirit, all of the things that you bring to the table. Every time you've written for the magazine, I know that it has shifted the hearts and minds of people who are there, and just even to watch the progression of, you know, what you were doing in 2018 to what you're working on now. I can only see incredible things coming towards you in the future, and I'm super grateful that you've been here with us today. I've really appreciated our time together in a very deep way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So the Science of Mind magazine has been in publication, for those of you who may not know this, for nearly 100 years. And as Ernest Holmes says, we are open at the top. So that's a super important thing for us. And coming up in the June issue, we have writer Julie Morrow with a feature interview with our brand new spiritual leader, Dr. Edward Viljoen. And we'll be looking forward to having that experience. He's got a big feature, and that'll be great. And also coming up, you can watch for details on our Park Point Press Authors Summit on Saturday, June 6th. Plus, we'll be releasing our global themes for 2021 this summer. And we welcome your submissions, which you can find on the scienceofmind.com website. So you can now find the magazine as well in digital format. It will be delivered to you in a flash with just a click. And managing editor Holly Sharp has made sure that each issue is truly, truly jam-packed with additional digital assets, including hyperlinks. So this is really a bonus experience for anybody who chooses to go the digital format. So thank you so much again for joining us today. We'll be back next week when host Amy Bishop launches one of the most anticipated parts of this series, which is interviews with New Thought musicians. And she's going to be starting out with one of my favorites, Gary Lynn Floyd. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you again, Jeffon. Really appreciate your time with us here today.
I appreciate it.
Peace and blessings.
Goodbye.